We're now going to go through how to conduct our last type of t-test that we'll discuss in SPSS, a two-related samples t-test, also commonly referred to as a dependent samples t-test, a paired samples t-test, and a correlated samples t-test. Remember that a two-related samples t-test will be used when we have data from two related or dependent groups and want to assess any difference between the population means. For this example, we're going to use new data entered into SPSS from 10 study participants who are patients in a rehabilitation facility after suffering a stroke. We have data from these participants on reported energy levels before a music therapy program was introduced, the variable labeled E before, and energy levels after a music therapy program was introduced, the variable labeled E after. Both energy level before the music therapy program was introduced and after the music therapy program was introduced are measured on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being low energy and 10 being high energy. We can see the data from our 10 participants by going to Data View and seeing the variable energy levels before the music therapy program measured on our 1 to 10 scale, and energy levels after the music therapy program was introduced, measured on the same scale in our 10 total participants. Let's go back to Variable View to discuss our test more in depth. We are going to be comparing energy levels before the music therapy program was introduced and after the music therapy program was introduced in the same individuals. We know that a dependent samples t-test is most appropriate in this case because the two groups we are comparing are measurements before and after the treatment in the same individuals. In other words, repeated measurements of the same individuals. So let's begin our hypothesis test. As with other hypothesis tests using SPSS, it is still important to go through all of the steps of a hypothesis test, although you will only use SPSS for the calculations component of your test, including the basic descriptive statistics from your groups, finding your test statistic and associated p-value, and constructing a confidence interval in a two dependent samples t-test. Starting our hypothesis test, our research question will be, do patients in a rehabilitation facility after suffering a stroke appear to have a different mean energy level before and after a music therapy program is introduced? Our hypotheses will focus on the mean difference in reported energy level in participants before and after the music therapy program. We will conduct a two-tailed test, testing if there is any difference between the reported energy level means. Our null hypothesis will be that the mean difference between the two groups, or mu sub d for difference, is equal to 0, asserting that there does not appear to be any mean difference. Our alternative hypothesis will be mu sub d is not equal to 0, asserting that there does appear to be some difference. For our decision rule, we're going to set our alpha level, in this case, to 0.01. Now we can begin using SPSS to conduct our two related samples t-test, which SPSS calls a paired samples t-test. Just as with previous tests, we will first click or scroll over the Analyze tab on the toolbar, go down to Compare Means in the drop-down menu, and over to Paired Samples t-test, which we'll click on. When the Paired Samples t-test box comes up, you will click to highlight the first enter variable, in this case, energy levels before the music therapy program for participants, and then click the arrow in the center to move this variable over to your paired variables box. You will then click to highlight the second entered variable, in this case energy levels after the music therapy program was introduced, and again click the arrow in the center of the box to move this entered variable into the paired variables box. Your first variable, in this case energy levels before the music therapy program was introduced, should be in the first column under variable 1 in the first row. Your second variable, in this case energy levels after the music therapy program was introduced, should be in the second column under variable 2 and again in the first row. We will then click Options to ensure that our confidence interval percentage corresponds with our desired significance level or alpha level. In this case, our alpha level is 0.01, so we will change our confidence interval percentage to 99% to correspond with our given alpha level. We will then click Continue and then OK. Once we click OK, SPSS will conduct our paired samples t-test and provide us with the test results in the output. As with previous hypothesis tests, SPSS gives us descriptive statistics including the mean, sample size, and standard deviation of our two groups, energy levels before and energy levels after the music therapy program was introduced. The box labeled Paired Samples Correlations contain values that we'll talk about at a later time. The box below will contain the results from our paired samples t-test. The mean and standard deviation of the difference scores between the two paired groups are reported there. Our test statistic, or calculated t for our test, is negative 2.703, our degrees of freedom, or DF, is 9, and our two-tailed p-value, reported by SPSS as SIG, is 0.024. Our standard error of the mean of the difference scores, or S sub D bar, is 0.40689. Our 99% confidence interval for the difference between population means has a lower limit of negative 2.42231 and an upper limit of 0.22231, indicating that we are 99% confident that the true population mean for difference scores falls between negative 2.42231 and 0.22231. We can use the information that SPSS has given us to complete our hypothesis test. We can compare the p-value of 0.024 to our alpha level of 0.01 to reach our decision about the null hypothesis. Since our p-value of 0.024 is greater than our alpha level of 0.01, we will choose to fail to reject, in other words, retain, the null hypothesis. We can interpret our decision about the null hypothesis by saying that it does not appear that there is a difference in population mean energy levels in patients in a rehabilitation facility after suffering a stroke before and after a music therapy program was introduced.